On September 1st, 1939, Germany invades Poland, igniting the Second World War. 2 days later, Britain and France declare war on Germany. As the Wehrmacht drives toward Warsaw, many German generals fear the French might simply march into Western Germany, and there's little to stop them if they do. Yet instead of striking back, the Allies remain largely inactive during the so-called Phony War. So why didn't they attack in 1939? While German infantry, cavalry, and tanks push deep into Poland, Britain and France send Hitler an ultimatum: withdraw or face war. Berlin ignores it, so London and Paris declare war on September 3rd, turning the German-Polish conflict into a world war. Hitler is stunned. He hadn't expected Britain and France to intervene, and now most of his army is tied up in Poland, leaving Germany's western frontier dangerously exposed. Interpreter Paul Schmidt recalls the tense moment he translated Britain's declaration. After I finished, there was total silence. Hitler sat motionless, staring straight ahead. After what felt like an eternity, he turned to Ribbentrop, who stood frozen at the window. "What now?" Göring muttered to me. "If we lose this war, may heaven have mercy on us." Though Hitler quickly recovers his composure, the Nazi leadership has reason to worry. The combined British and French empires possess more troops, aircraft, warships, manpower, and resources than Germany. Only 11 German divisions guard the west behind the unfinished Siegfried Line. Most of the panzers and the Luftwaffe are fighting in Poland. France, meanwhile, mobilizes 4.5 million men, 2,000 tanks, and 10,000 guns. Even without the British Expeditionary Force, French power on the frontier far outweighs German strength. General Siegfried Westphal later admits that if France had launched a full-scale assault, Germany could have held out for barely 2 weeks, a chilling thought as the French do cross the border on September 7, 1939, in the little-known Sarre Offensive. Bound by alliance with Poland, France had pledged to attack within 2 weeks of mobilization. With Germany advancing rapidly in the east, French Commander-in-Chief Maurice Gamelin orders the operation early, sending units of the Third Army forward. Would you like me to continue rewriting the next paragraph from Third Army forward, onward in the same style? And the Fourth French armies move into Germany. They seize the heavily mined Warnt Forest and capture several villages in the first few days, but advance no more than 8 kilometers along a 25-kilometer front. Fighting is light, as one French soldier recalls. "We haven't suffered many losses so far. Most came from mines in German territory. For example, a soldier picks up a Hun officer's kepi. A mine explodes. He grabs an apple. A mine explodes. A dead hare lies on the ground. He drags it and a mine explodes. The most dangerous mines have delayed fuses, buried in the villages we occupy. Despite their early gains, French troops stop short of the West Wall under orders from High Command. What follows is a month of scattered potshots and minor skirmishes. Gamelin considers the offensive a fulfilled promise to Poland and concludes that Poland's fate is already sealed. In October, with reports of German divisions shifting west, the French pull back to the Maginot Line. By mid-October, the brief Sarre Offensive, the only real ground action of the so-called Phony War, Drôle de Guerre or Sitzkrieg, comes to an end. It cost France about 1,500 casualties and Germany around 500. After the war, Field Marshal Wilhelm Keitel admits that Allied passivity astonished the German High Command. "We were surprised to find only minor skirmishes between the Siegfried and Maginot lines. We could not understand why France didn't seize this unique opportunity, and it confirmed our belief that the Western powers did not truly want war against us. So why did Britain and France fail to strike when Germany's western border lay virtually undefended? One reason is their strategic mindset. Both powers planned for a drawn-out war of attrition, not the fast, mobile warfare Germany was waging. The Allies believed time was on their side, just as in the First World War. They preferred to fully mobilize their armies and industries before launching a major campaign they expected to take at least 5 years to win. France, in particular, wanted time to acquire more aircraft from the United States to bolster its underpowered air force, while Britain prepared for a long fight. Time for Britain to build up a full-strength army to fight alongside France. By the end of September, only 150,000 British troops are in France, far too few to share the burden. The Allies also begin a naval blockade of Germany on September 4th, part of their long war strategy, but they underestimate how vital Soviet raw materials will be to sustaining the German war effort. Allied planners expect their militaries and industries to be fully ready for a major offensive by 1941 or 1942. In the meantime, they accept that Poland will fall, intending to restore it after their eventual victory. British diplomat Alexander Cadogan sums it up bluntly and prophetically. In mid-September 1939, we must lose the war for 4 years before we win a decisive battle. A cornerstone of Allied thinking is faith in the superiority of the defense. Another lesson from the First World War. If Germany strikes first, France can fight from the advantage of the Maginot Line, an extensive network of fortifications along the frontier. A defensive stance, they hope, will spare French lives. France suffered far worse than Britain or Germany in the last war, and with a low birth rate and static population since 1914, it now has fewer men of military age than its rivals. These demographic realities make French leaders even more determined to wait until Britain has raised a larger army to share the load. They are also desperate to avoid turning France into a battlefield once again, which makes Belgium central to Allied planning. The strategy is to meet a German invasion on Belgian soil, but Belgium refuses to join any war preparations, insisting on strict neutrality. This neutrality is a crippling flaw in Allied defense plans. If Germany attacks through Belgium as in 1914, France's flank would be exposed. The Franco-Belgian frontier isn't protected by the Maginot Line either. It would have been too costly to extend, and the shallow water table makes deep fortifications impossible. Belgium's neutrality leaves France vulnerable and makes an offensive into Germany seem even riskier. Many Allied commanders, including General Gamelin, vent their frustration. He writes bitterly, "The Belgians are unthinking, short-sighted mediocrities, largely to blame for Poland's destruction. They have seriously hampered Franco-British action when they could have helped in many ways. Belgium must bear a heavy responsibility, and she will pay for it by serving as the power's battlefield." French planners, meanwhile, begin looking for other ways to take the war elsewhere. Some propose bombing Soviet oil fields at Baku or blocking oil routes across the Caspian and Black Seas to cripple Germany's fuel supply and achieve a strategic victory without mass bloodshed. Others suggest mining the Rhine River to disrupt German trade, or launching interventions in the Balkans or Norway. First Lord of the Admiralty, Winston Churchill even proposes a naval thrust into the Baltic, a daring move that would likely cost the Royal Navy dearly, as the true power of air attacks on warships is not yet understood. But any such bold action in the West would still require political capital, and that is in short supply in France. The country is deeply divided. Far right against far left, those committed to the war effort against those who doubt it, and countless personal rivalries in between. Some even argue France should avoid major risks at the front in case Britain makes a separate peace with Germany and leaves her exposed. Military leadership is equally uncertain. The Allied command structure is cumbersome, and General Gamelin is a cautious, indecisive figure. Charles de Gaulle famously likens him to a scientist calmly experimenting in a lab. In high-level meetings held in mid-September, the Allies reaffirmed their commitment to a long defensive war of attrition. In their eyes, it's the logical course, fitting the kind of large-scale conflict they expect by 1941 or 1942. At the heart of this mindset stands the Maginot Line. Built between 1929 and 1937, it stretches 145 kilometers along the Franco-German frontier, a massive network of fortresses, bunkers, and underground galleries. The larger forts contain rotating gun turrets, power generators, living quarters, and even narrow-gauge railways for ammunition and supplies. It is state-of-the-art, but so costly that other branches of the French military suffered deep cuts to pay for it. The Maginot Line embodies French doctrine shaped by the First World War. Rely on massed artillery in a grinding war of attrition where the defender holds the upper hand. Given the vast resources of the French and British empires and the prospect of American industry supporting them, the strategy appears sound. It avoids the staggering losses of another offensive bloodbath. As Marshal Pétain famously declared, France's approach would be lavish with steel, stingy with blood. The French army of 1939 is more modern than in 1918, with superior tanks, greater motorization, fewer cavalry, and an air force, but its thinking remains rooted in the past. French tanks, though often equal to or better than their German counterparts, are built to support infantry and advance only under artillery cover. The Armée de l'Air is designed mainly for home defense, not offensive strikes. It fields barely 100 bombers at the war's outbreak. The result is a rigid, centralized, and cautious system ill-suited to the demands of 1939, when success might require bold, fast-moving operations. This mindset had taken root years earlier. In 1935, War Minister General Louis Morin asked rhetorically, "Why, having built our fortifications of the Maginot Line, would we abandon them for some unknown adventure?" Another factor reinforcing this caution is the belief, mistaken as it turns out, that Germany has already reached its economic peak for war mobilization, while France and Britain still have much to build. Convinced of the defensive's superiority and of their fortifications' impregnability, French leaders refused to turn their doctrine on its head in 1939. They are further deterred by the presence of Germany's own defensive barrier, the West Wall, or Siegfried Line. In reality, it's incomplete and far weaker than the French imagine. But their confidence in the Maginot Line makes them overestimate the challenge of breaking through it. Even the better equipped and more mobile British Expeditionary Force adopts a defensive stance. When British troops begin arriving in France in September 1939, they start building their own network of bunkers and pillboxes, soon known as the Gort Line after BEF Commander Lord Gort. Thus, Allied strategy, doctrine, and politics all combined to explain why there was no invasion of Germany in the fall of 1939. After Poland's defeat by German and Soviet forces in October, the Western Front settles into uneasy silence. The phony war has truly begun. Both sides use the lull to prepare for the next campaign in spring. Actual fighting is rare, limited to artillery duels and small skirmishes, but terrifying for those caught in them. While we were cutting trees near the front, the Germans began to bombard us. I don't know how I was spared. Surely our Lord intervened. One of my friends just 1.5 meters away was cut in two and died without a sound. Another, even closer, had his ribs shattered and belly torn open by shrapnel. 6 days later, as I write this, I still cry thinking of that horrible carnage and the screams. Along parts of the Rhine, French and German soldiers simply watch one another across the river. Sometimes the Germans broadcast propaganda over loudspeakers, trying to stir anti-British sentiment among the French. Meanwhile, on the British home front, a popular song boosts morale by mocking German fortifications. We're going to hang out the washing on the Siegfried Line. Contrary to grim pre-war expectations, neither side launches a large-scale bombing campaign. Both fear devastating retaliation and mass civilian deaths, and the French in particular lack radar and air defenses. British planners had once predicted that the Luftwaffe could drop 3,500 tons of bombs on London in a single day and kill 600,000 people within 6 months, based on the chilling belief that the bomber will always get through. But the expected knockout blow never comes. Neither side has enough heavy bombers or a workable strategy for sustained strategic bombing. The Germans have no plans for one at this stage, and the Allies hesitate to provoke them. So air activity is largely confined to leaflet drops, reconnaissance, and small-scale raids on military or naval targets. It is a far cry from the Luftwaffe's destruction of Polish cities. During the quiet winter months, the French army improves its organization and equipment, but morale and discipline steadily erode. The bitter cold, inactivity, poor rations, and miserable conditions wear down the troops. Alcohol abuse, bad water, disease, and squalid housing become common problems. Suicides account for nearly 4% of military deaths. Many soldiers resent the wealthy and privileged who have avoided service, and some whisper that Britain has dragged France into another unwanted war. In the Maginot Line, conditions are better, dry, heated, and well supplied, yet the endless underground life drains the spirit. One soldier writes in December, "I can assure you that I've had enough of this underground existence. I've been here since August 23rd, and it's too much. There's no diversion, and we're allowed only 1 hour a day outside to breathe." The phony war also creates distance between the home front and the men in uniform. The philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre, serving in the army, describes it to his partner Simone de Beauvoir, Castor, a ghost war, a Kafkaesque war. I cannot feel it. It escapes me. The dispatches say nothing. There are no wounded, no bombs, no Germans on our soil. Castor is at war, not me. When I left her on September 2nd, I was ready for more than this quiet mediocrity. Now I am infected, rotten. Across the Channel, some British officers begin to doubt their allies, suspecting that the French army might not stand firm when the real fighting begins. When General Alan Brooke witnesses a French parade in November, he's appalled. Men unshaven, horses ungroomed, clothes and saddlery that did not fit, vehicles dirty, and a complete lack of pride in themselves and their units. What shook me the most, however, was the look in the men's faces, disgruntled and insubordinate looks. Although ordered to give the eyes left, hardly a man bothered to do so. Keegan, 62. While morale wavers among the Allies, both sides prepare for the major battles expected in 1940. In November, the Allies finalize the Dial-Breda Plan, which calls for British and French troops to advance into Belgium and the Netherlands if Germany invades. But because the Dutch and Belgians insist on maintaining neutrality, no joint preparations are possible, meaning the Allies will have to improvise if war comes. Hitler, meanwhile, wants to strike west as early as November, but delays, poor weather, and pushback from his generals postpone Case Yellow until spring. His life is almost cut short before then, when German resistor Georg Elser's bomb explodes in a Munich beer hall just minutes after Hitler departs. The phony war remains one of the most overlooked chapters of the Second World War, overshadowed by the dramatic campaigns that followed. Yet it holds the key to understanding 1940. The months of waiting, the cautious strategy, and the unwillingness to seize the initiative all paved the way for the disasters to come. It might have been different if the Allies had attacked in September 1939, but their defensive mindset and fear of risk kept the Western Front eerily quiet until everything changed in May. This often forgotten lull is rarely seen in traditional documentaries, but it was far from uneventful for those who lived it. And thanks to the ongoing support of our viewers, we can bring these lesser-known moments to light. If you'd like to help us continue making in-depth historical documentaries, you can support us directly at patreon.com/realtimehistory. Every contribution helps us create better research, maps, and animations. Special thanks to Leander Lurch for his help with this episode. To learn more about what followed the phony war, check out our videos on the battles for Norway and France in 1940. I'm Jesse Alexander, and this has been a production of Real Time History, the only history channel that's lavish with steel but stingy with blood.